Behind the code, the frameworks, and the breakthroughs
are stories of triumph, failure,
resilience, and growth.
This is The Developer's Journey
With your hosts, Ronald Dolph
and Olivia McVicker.
I would start learning something and then share it with my friends. And the process of learning in order to teach is also enjoyable because it's almost like you're going down a path of discovery.
Koushik Kothagal is the creator of Java Brains, a beloved YouTube channel that helped millions of developers master Java and Spring frameworks.
I struggle with pretty much everything. Like any new topic that I have to learn, there is that struggle. There's always going to be a mountain to climb. You should put that in the thumbnail. And what the guy from Java Brains really thinks about Java.
Koushik, thanks so much for joining. We're here with Olivia, my co-host, and Koushik, our guest for today. So to get started, can you give us just a short little background about yourself and how you got to this point in your career?
Sure. My name is Koushik Kothagal. I am a staff engineer at LinkedIn. And I also have a YouTube channel and a website called Java Brains. I like to teach Java and JavaScript technologies and lately AI technologies. So I have a bunch of content there. I've been posting content on YouTube for the last, 11 to 12 years. So it's been a while. I've also been in the software industry for a little over 22 years now. I completed my computer science graduation in India, South India. I come from a city called Bangalore. I worked on a bunch of technologies starting from Visual Basic to VB.NET to Java. And these days I've moved to a little more like full stack Java, JavaScript, and very recently I've been doing a lot of Python work as well with AI. So kind of been all over the place in terms of technology. And it's kind of helped me also in my teaching side of things, where I can teach all the cool stuff that I get to learn and use at work.
You said that you're a staff engineer at LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. There's LinkedIn Learning, and you have your content on your channel. Have you done any courses on LinkedIn Learning? Because I've learned about you through YouTube, but I don't know if I came across you on LinkedIn Learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of good content on LinkedIn Learning, which kind of covers like a broad range of topics. I do a very specific set of topics which I know and I have experience with. I did think about possibly publishing some stuff on LinkedIn Learning, but I didn't go down that path because that stuff is very, very professional and very formal and all that stuff. For me, it's more of like, I don't plan so much. I plan what I need to teach, but not so much how I teach it. So my style of teaching is a little bit different, probably not aligned with what they do in LinkedIn Learning. So I didn't explore it a lot.
We asked Koushik about his YouTube channel, and it made us wonder, have you ever thought about creating your own YouTube channel? What would it be about, and how would you choose the topics? Practicing your development skills outside of work can help strengthen your abilities and help you think outside of the box. Even if your channel isn't about coding, just improving as a communicator can boost your career in powerful ways. So, what would your channel be about? Let us know in the comments. So, you mentioned that Java Brains has been around for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Has that always been your approach to creating content? How did you get started with it?
I didn't even start thinking about content creation at the time. This was during when YouTube was very new, right? We're talking about 11 years ago when people were still watching cat videos on YouTube. I distinctly remember there was this particular challenge I was having with a Java framework called Hibernate, right? Hibernate is an ORM framework that's useful for connecting to relational databases with Java, whatever. So there was this problem I was struggling with, and at the time, when you do a Google search, you'd find some results. That was the time when YouTube videos started showing up as an alternative to kind of unblock yourself and learn something new. So I did some searches for my specific problem. I didn't understand what was going on, and there was this YouTube video. I still don't remember who posted that. It was like a short, like 3-minute video. And it kind of explained it in such a way that I really got what was wrong. And it was a different kind of learning. It didn't just unblock me, it kind of taught me to unblock myself. It was like that was a moment where like, wow, this is awesome. And well, now how can I do something like this? It's it's a way for me to contribute back. I wasn't even thinking about monetizing or content creation or anything like that at the time. I just wanted to share something that I learned. So there was this stuff that I was learning with servlets at the time. I don't think anybody uses servlets directly these days, but so I was like, okay, let me start creating like a couple of videos about it, and that's how it started. It was like I want to teach something. There's an opportunity to teach, and from there it led to like a proper channel in that sense.
So you said you wanted to teach. Is it because you've always enjoyed teaching and helping and mentoring others? Or was there also another reason, like maybe when you teach, you also like learn it even more because you really have to understand it to explain it to someone?
The answer is yes to both. It's I've always loved teaching. The funny thing is, even when I was studying, I used to teach. So I have a bunch of friends who would come to me that quite when I was in college, right? I had a few buddies of mine who would come to me and like, hey, I don't understand this particular thing that was taught in class. We also happen to be, the kind of students who wouldn't attend all the classes. I don't know if I should say this in a
And that time's passed. It's fine.
well, um, but the thing is, like, we had this kind of tendency to self-learn a lot, even while we were attending like college, a group of my friends. And I happened to be the friend in the group who would start self-learning sooner than the others. And it was for a reason. It was like I used to learn and then basically share what I learned with my friends. And it was more like a, a, a mini teaching session right there. And it got to a point where it became like a habit, right? I would start learning something and then share it with my friends, and we used to do this on a regular basis. And it was like this is something that I actually enjoy, teaching people, and the process of learning in order to teach is also enjoyable because it's almost like you're going down a path of discovery, and you can't wait to share that aha moment, that kind of like insight with someone. That really got me down the path of like, okay, this is something that I enjoy doing, so I should do more of it. And the whole YouTube thing is just one avenue where it kind of unlocked the opportunity for me to share and teach to a much larger audience. If YouTube didn't happen and we didn't have online websites, I'd probably still be teaching, but to people close to me in that sense.
I'm curious how you view the balance between teaching someone, helping them understand a complex topic, with also giving them the opportunity to learn for themselves and to kind of struggle through it, because there is that balance there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on what is being taught in the software industry. A lot of struggling and learning through struggling happens through actually implementing what you have learned. The way I approach learning something, it's kind of broken down into two parts, right? The first thing that I like to do is kind of do bottom up learning, right? So for me, it's like I've tried both approaches, so basically top down and bottom up. Just to clarify, top down is basically you kind of have a high level lay of the land. Okay, what are all the elements? How do they work together? And then kind of dive deep into each individual element and then see how it fits the big picture. I've tried that, and for me, that doesn't work because you're kind of missing the foundation to even appreciate the top view. For me, it works well when I'm do bottom up. So basically, take a small piece, understand it well, build something so that it kind of drives that point home in your mind, and then go one level up, and then go on, right, bottom up. You can break down learning into two pieces there. The first is the understanding piece. Understand what is the problem? Why are we doing something, right? And why are we doing that in this particular way? And then implement something. That's where you struggle and you break your head and try to figure out what's going on. Get something working. Now you really have this complement of you understood a concept, and then you try to apply the concept, and then you discover in the journey of applying that concept, and then you go one level up and so on. So I think it's complementary, and they both work when they work in tandem. You don't want to spend too much time struggling without understanding what's going on, because you just end up getting frustrated and you just give up at some point, or you try to find a workaround and you bypass the understanding piece. So as long as those two work in tandem, I think that's a great learning experience.
So let's talk about struggle learning. Were there topics that you felt you struggled learning? And is that how you came about this approach with like bottom up to study material?
Oh yeah, I struggle with pretty much everything. Like any new topic that I have to learn, there is that struggle. I guess it gets easier over time when you begin to see patterns repeat, right? You've been in the industry for 20 years, you see some patterns, some thought processes just repeat over and over again. Generally, when you start a new concept, it's completely unknown territory or a new framework or a new language. There's a lot of unknowns there. So there is that struggle. I think in my mind, I kind of reframe it so that it isn't like a struggle and I'm struggling. It's more of like, okay, here's something that I need to kind of overcome in a way. I don't see it as a struggle, more as the thing that I need to do in order to get to where I need to be. So that happens all the time for sure. A recent example I can give you is reactive programming. The model of reactive programming is very different from the way you do imperative programming. So that was a struggle. Working with LLMs was a struggle that I had to kind of go through recently. And again, I had to reframe it as, okay, this is something that there's no equivalent of that in my past experience. So there's a new concept I need to figure out. I need to use some of my existing models to understand this. And then again, work on it and apply it so that I can really get what's going on.
So what does it mean to struggle for you? How do you define what is struggling?
That's a good question. When I'm thinking of when I work on an application, right, or when I write code, you have an idea of what you need to do when you begin, and often that idea is wrong. It could be a design that you try to implement, or it could be syntax that you know that you're going to use, and you apply it, and then it doesn't quite work, right? Something breaks, or you don't get the behavior that you want, right? And that's when you go like, I lack the skill, or I lack the knowledge to get to what I need. The program needs to work, has to provide the certain output. I did what I think would get me there, but that didn't work. So what is that delta? So now you have this unknown, or perhaps the known unknown that you need to learn, right? A lot of that is specific to what this code is that you're not going to use again, right? Just this, okay, this particular API needs this particular argument in this way, and only then it'll work. That's the error message. And once I get that, I'm going to apply that, and that knowledge is not useful for me again. And there is a second aspect of it, which is like, I'm missing something fundamental in my understanding of this framework that I need to learn and figure out. Both of these would qualify as struggle in that sense. One of them isn't as high value longer term, but the second one is. So I think both of them would qualify an answer to your question.
So, as we're talking about, okay, you get this code, it doesn't quite work. I'm curious, in the age of AI generated code, what are your tips for people to make sure they are still embracing that struggle and they're not just like, oh, cool, this code worked or it didn't work. I don't know why. Let me just feed it back in until something pops out. How do you guide people through that?
My mental model for working with AI has been similar to how I would treat autocomplete. When I think of the pre-AI IDE experience, right? You type in some code, you get autocomplete, and you hit the first thing that shows up. Some IDEs, some coding experiences are pretty smart in what it shows up at the beginning, right? So take IntelliJ, for example. I know I'm talking about IntelliJ in a vscode.
Oh, it's fine. Do it.
Yeah, I'm speaking from my Java experience, and I'm pretty sure there are some extensions in VS Code which does this too. The autocomplete that you get when you hit tab is contextual. It doesn't just show all the things that you could type in alphabetical order. It kind of makes sense of what's going on. So perhaps there's a little bit of AI-ness to it, but basically it suggests something that could very well be the right answer. Just hit tab and you're done, right? You could do that more often than not and still have something close to what you want to do. But even if I hit tab, I see what's going on, right? I see what it generated, and if that makes sense to me, did it get it right? And then once I figure that out and I know that it's right, only then I move on. I follow the same principle for AI as well. If I want to build something, I break it down into a smaller set of pieces, and then I give each piece to the LLM, have it generate output, and then I kind of validate it at that individual level. Okay, did it do a good job? Has it got it right? What are some mistakes that it's made? So even though I'm delegating the code generation work to the AI, I still have the planning, the task breakdown, and the overall structure in my mind. I'm still doing that job. I'm not letting the AI do it. So in that sense, I still have some control, first of all. And the second thing is there is still that element of struggle where, we talked about the two types of struggle, right? This is an aha moment for me as I'm describing this. The first type of struggle is where you're with syntactical. This API requires this argument, and you have to struggle to figure out what that argument is, and you're going to never touch it again. And the second struggle is conceptual. You don't understand something and you need to understand it, which could potentially help in future coding experiences. AI is great at taking care of that first part of the struggle, the first piece, right? Syntax and the grunt work, things that you would normally go to Stack Overflow for. The second piece you can still have control over. And that's what I've been doing so far. Like, I have this mental model of exactly what I'm going to build, what's the coding structure and all that stuff. So that's my balance, and that's what I would advise to others as well.
I appreciate that. I know, like, for me, when I think of like struggle, I think in terms of the time it takes me to understand a concept. And then there's how do I minimize that? Because there's some people that hear a concept and they get it like right away. But if I'm going through some documentation and it's not written in a way that I just get it, I have to look at all these other sources, or if it's somebody that's explaining it and they're not really that great at explaining it, that's the part that usually makes me struggle. The time and the resources and the best way to minimize the time before I could actually get something, because there's other people that just get it right away. So with AI, I do wonder if there's some people that don't want to take the time to really understand something, and then they just go with it with what's given, and then try to hope it works.
Yeah, it's tempting to rely on it as a shortcut to not having to do that second part of the struggle as well, right? So why even have that control? Why even break down a top level task into smaller chunks and manage that? Why not delegate that to the AI as well? The problem is, if you do delegate it to the AI will take it up and it'll do something, right? Now, when you want to change it, you again have to have the AI basically build up that whole mental model all over again because of context, right? Every time you're working with an AI, you're going to have to set up that context and have it modified in a way. But if you have that context in your mind, you basically let the AI do the thing that it's actually good at, which is to kind of implement the idea while you are the creator or you control the idea. I think that's the best way. That's the best boundary where you can delegate that part to the AI.
Is there anything that you really don't enjoy teaching, but the content demand is strong for it?
I don't like, so I guess the part that that requires like too much of the specifics. I don't know how to describe this. Let me think about this.
You're like, I actually hate Java, but it gets
It's too late to change now.
You should put that in the thumbnail. And what the guy from Java Brains really thinks about Java.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of detail that you need to manage when you're coding. Details like fine-grained details about APIs, about classes and objects, and like you have a library which implements something that you want to use. Okay, you want to make a call. What do? You figure out what's the API for it. That specific library expects this particular argument to be in this way, this other particular argument to be in this other way. You, at a high level, you know what needs to be done. At the end of the day, you're going to call that API. That API is going to do what you want it to do, and you're going to get the response back. But there's a lot of work in calling the API just the right way so that it works. And because of the nature of the language and the compiler and the way our industry, the programming experience works, everything has to be just right or you get an error. Okay. So at a high level, you know what needs to be done. The rest is all in the details, which don't add a lot of value, but you still got to do it because without that, it doesn't work. So as a teacher, explaining at a high level what needs to be done is very fulfilling because that's like the brains behind the whole thing, right? You know why you're doing it and what's the purpose and all that. But the smaller details, okay, this particular API expects this field to be set this way and this field to be set this way, and the moon has to be over here. And it's like
Yeah.
everything has to be aligned to be just right. Those details are not so enjoyable to teach, but they still have to be taught in some way. And when you're learning it, you still have to learn it in some way. That's something that I hope the AI is gonna offload from us. But that's the part that I don't quite enjoy teaching. But you do have to teach when you're teaching people how to code.
Right. That makes sense, kinda the more, like, tedious parts
Yeah.
where yeah, I definitely think that that is a big area that AI can help with, just kinda like
Yeah.
those things that maybe you don't need those higher brain problem-solving skills for, and just kind of things like, "Okay, it can take care of this," like, that's fine. But to your point, it's still important to understand, like, why it exists, why those details are there, it's still part of the teaching process, but it's kind of what this is, so hopefully, like, once you kind of get it the first time, you just be like, "Okay, let's send it to AI."
Yeah. And also, these are things which could potentially change from like API version 2 to API version 3 or this library to this other library. While the overall idea is the same, the smaller nuances keep changing often. So it's also about like keeping track of these updates and all that, which just is tedium after a certain point. Once you know how to make this work, there's just smaller details, is just extra work you have to do.
Have you ever thought about walking away from Java because there's like a new framework that's getting all this attention?
Yeah, I know. In a way, like I said, I've been all over the place. It's not like I'm firmly entrenched in the Java category. I've been teaching a bunch of other stuff as well. I've been working. These days, I work entirely on Python. I think it's a mistake for us to. I know I have a channel called Java Brains, but I think for all of us personally, it's a mistake to kind of couple our identity as a programmer with specific technologies, because as programmers, we should be open to trying new things and using the right tool for the job. So I don't personally find myself tied to Java in any way, apart from the unfortunate choice of a channel name. But it's like, I'm open to trying out anything that works, anything that's cool. I think as engineers, our job is to solve problems. So whatever helps us solve people's problems, that's the right tool for the job.
On that note, how do you take that thought process and apply it to what you decide to teach next on your channel? Or is it based off, just something you wanna learn about? Is it based off the hot thing in the industry? How do you approach that?
It's mainly what I have worked on and learned. It's again goes back to the whole thing that started my passion for teaching. It's like I learned something new, and I'm like, here's this cool new thing. I want to share it with others, right? That's what drives me to teach. So everything that I teach is something that I've learned and found useful, and I've struggled, and I want to share my journey and my understanding with others. These days, I've made some content about LLMs and the kind of like the concepts behind LLMs. And this is again from my journey as a Java developer and this kind of almost perceived incompatibility between Java as a tech stack and the LLM, which is more Python heavy. A lot of people I've talked to say, well, yeah, I know I want to get into AI, but I only know Java. I don't know Python. So that's kind of holding me back. That held me back for a bit as well. And I was like, no, this doesn't have to. LLM is basically language agnostic. There are some tools which let you work with LLM, which are in Python, but that is also not changing. You have Java frameworks which let you work with LLMs. So okay, here is a journey that I went through, and I learned the LLM concepts without having to write a single line of Python code. I was like, okay, let me make some content on understanding LLM and all the underlying complexities without having to write Python. And that was my content. So that's basically my thought process. I don't chase algorithms and I don't chase view counts. I know that I can make a bunch of controversial videos and it probably gets more views than a serious deep dive on something like OAuth or a specific framework. But I think it's like it'll be too exhausting. I'm not gonna look at view counts. I just learn something and I teach it and that's about it.
In our series, we've talked about the importance of mentoring, and it's not limited to just a formal in-person conversation. Mentoring can be as simple as just asking questions to a guest on our podcast or someone more senior who can point you in the right direction. It could just be a message, a forwarded question, or a short piece of advice. Just keep in mind that mentoring takes many forms, so don't limit yourself. Every connection is a chance to learn and grow. Don't be shy. What's an example of something controversial, if you were tasked to do it today, that you would do?
Probably a video of what I really think about Java. No, I'm kidding. Uh, I would probably have maybe about some of the. This is something that I actually want to do, not because it's controversial, but something that I really feel is some of the challenges that Java developers face today and some of the poor decisions made by, uh, you know, in the design of the Java language, right? One of the things that Java is very famous for is backward compatibility, right? You can run 20 years old code in Java, and you cannot do that in pretty much any other programming language ecosystem. I think it's great, but it's also holding the language back. And on the other hand, you have this really fast cadence of Java. Now there are new versions every 6 months, and it seems like it's growing at a fast pace. But then there's also this like Java has this one foot in the past with backward compatibility. So there's this tension here. That's kind of holding the language back, I think, and I have some opinions on it. This, as I speak about this, is probably a good video to make. I'll probably probably make this one. This is going to be a controversial take, but stuff like that. It's not purely clickbait, but stuff that I think could be perceived as controversial. That's about the extent of clickbaitiness for me. I'm not going to go beyond that.
So it sounds like your opinion would be like Java should try to let go some of that need to be super backwards compatible. Is that it?
I think as a culture, it needs to be a little more. Let's break some things which are not as new. There are a bunch of things in the language. It's say for example, primitive types, right? Java has primitive types, and then it has object types for those primitives. So you have int as a primitive, and you have integer as a class that is equivalent to the primitive. And the only reason those classes exist, it's called boxing. We basically convert from primitive to object types. The only reason it exists is because of another feature of Java called generics. It was introduced way back.
I remember that.
So we have these two types. There are a lot of other languages which kind of do away with primitive types. Everything is an object, right? We could potentially have done that in Java back when it was Java. I think Java 5 was what had generics. It would have been painful then, but the pain then would have solved so much pain later. We just held on to it because we wanted it to be backward compatible, which is a good idea to have in general, but we also have to take some of that pain once in a while as a community. That would be that's Kaushik's hot take on Java.
We got our thumbnail.
I know. All right. So, we've been focusing on the content that you've been making recently and how you've approached teaching and how that's tied into your career as a software engineer. Looking back at the very start of your career, what's one thing that you wish you had known going into it?
I wish I had known how much of learning and constantly keeping oneself up to date is necessary in this industry. I have like when I was growing up, I used to see working professionals who would have a very clear demarcation between professional life and personal life. And there was this one relative of mine who would bring work home, right? These huge binders of files he would bring home, and he would work at home. And it was all, some of, people I know would talk about, oh, this guy is actually bringing work home. It was like a big thing at the time. There was this clear demarcation. And there are a lot of other professions where that demarcation is achievable. But I don't think in the software industry we can expect that, especially these days with so much of competitiveness going around. You have to work on yourself after work. So there's this work that you do where you're doing what you're paid for. And then there's work that you do on your own time where you're getting yourself to be better at doing what you will be paid for in the future. So there's this constant upkeep, constant catching up. And there's this constant change that you have to catch up to as well, right? It's not that you get better and you get better over time. There's a new framework that comes up, and now you're starting from the scratch and you're going to have to catch up all over again. Like I said, it gets better over time, but there's still that learning that you have to do. I didn't know that when I started. I'm glad that I happen to be a person who enjoys this process of learning and teaching. So it's good that I chose this field. But if I didn't have that tendency to do it, I would have been more miserable. So that's something that I wish I knew, so that I knew going in that this is something that I enjoy. I think I just lucked out that it happened to be something that I enjoy.
Yeah, because it can definitely be, if you always like, there's a moving target of things to learn, and there is.
There
I
is,
can see how if you don't understand that just can be very demoralizing, and you
Yeah.
just feel like you never truly catch up and you're always behind, and that's a tough mindset to wrap yourself around, and rather you just kinda need to flip it a little bit. There's always things to learn and view it that way.
yeah. It can be intimidating, right? That's something that we gotta fight because you know, think about learning AI these days. Like every day there is a new paper coming out. I don't think I can really understand what goes through a mind of someone who's just like fresh out of college. They're entering the industry, and it must be very difficult. I've been in the industry for 20 years, so I'm gonna have to work hard to put myself in that place and kind of think from their viewpoint how difficult it'll be. I told you I didn't attend all the classes in my college. I don't know if my college professors would potentially be watching this. It's difficult to catch up once you feel like you're already lagging behind, right? It's like you miss a class, the second class becomes even harder, and then the third class becomes even more hard. Like it kind of grows. So for someone who's aware of like how LLM works, for example, and they missed the developments in the last couple of months, sure, it's a little hard to catch up, but you can do it. But if you've missed for a while, it seems all the more intimidating. You just have to fight that feeling and go like, well, it's only going to get worse if you delay it. Just do these small pieces of like learning, a little bit here, a little bit there. And as you start working on it, the pieces do fit. So that's the part that we have to kind of consciously be aware of. Like, yeah, there's always going to be a mountain to climb. So you just have to start, and even crossing a little bit is better than nothing. So you just take that first step.
So there's a question that we like to ask towards the end of our episode. What was the worst day in your software engineering career, and how do you overcome it? And then what was the best day and why?
The worst day, there have been a few, but one thing comes to mind precisely because I wouldn't say I overcame it. It was the day that I struggled, and I think eventually gave up. This was a product we were building. It was kind of like you folks know familiar with Web 2.0? This was a big thing at the time. This was what, 2006, 2007, around that time. Oh man, I really feel old now. But anyway, it was a thing, right? Web 2.0 was a thing. This was when Facebook was just becoming popular, I guess. We were working on a product. I'm not going to name the company. We were working on a product in that space, like the old social media. And we wanted to move really fast because there was a lot of competition at the time. One of the ways we decided to move fast was by cutting corners in the process. Right? We didn't have CI/CD back then. We made changes to the code and we manually took the distributable and deployed it SSH into the servers, which ran in production, and we would deploy it, right? The whole 12-factor thing and all that, this is all after that. This is before these formalized processes. So we made some changes. We were going to release a new feature. We pushed the button, we deployed it, and then nothing worked, right? Nothing worked. All of the stuff that we did over the last like 2-3 months, nothing worked. And yes, it was a 2 to 3 month period before the last deployment. And we were trying to figure out, okay, where did all this go? Like we see the code in our source repository, we do the build, we take the build and we deploy it, and nothing's working. Then we realized there is a problem with our build script, right? It's missing out on getting the new changes and generating the artifact. It's a WAR file. People who are working in Java will know. We had to deploy it to an application container. It was missing out on all the changes that we've done over a while. And there was no easy way for us to figure that out. So what we did was we unzipped, exploded the WAR, and we kind of manually copied over the files one by one. We realized there was a bug. We'd make a change to the source code, compile it, copy the compiled file into the production server. This is a nightmare. It's like we had to do this one by one, figure out, okay, did this feature get deployed? Because we get short of time, close to the deadline, we didn't have time to fix the process. So we had to just do what it takes to get the code so that the feature shows up in the application. I remember we were at office for, I think, 2 days straight. And at the end of the day, we did all we could, and then the feature still didn't work well. And then something happened. The senior leadership at the time decided to scrap it. So it was like 3 months of work all went down the drain because of that. I would say that qualifies as the worst day in my work experience. Thankfully, though, that thing is very unlikely to happen now because as an industry, we have kind of gotten to the maturity where even the 12-factor app, right? We know that we don't want to mess with the deployed application. We have CI/CD processes and all that. So that's if any of you folks worrying about like why we have those processes, why it saves us.
There's stories there.
Um, as for the best day at work, there are a lot of those. Like anytime I get something working, I really enjoy. It's like this dopamine hit. I would say all those are good days, right? You release you work on a feature, and I see that working, get deployed. Those are all good days, in my opinion. There's a lot of those. I don't have really one or two to pick.
Beautiful. Great answers. That's going to be it. We're at the end of like the episode. Thank you so much for joining. Learned a lot from your experience and your journey. Folks, thanks for joining for another episode of Developer's Journey. If you haven't subscribed, feel free to do so you can see for upcoming episodes. And I will see you all in the next one.